Yeah.
Make my organs flesh technology. No, actually, don't do that to me specifically. It's just interesting. So this one was bonkers. Like, what a truly bonkers film. And everything I learned as a result of watching this film, like, one, a lot of the plot, like, while it was like shocking in the fact it was like really gross, did not necessarily surprise me. This was just like a little tangent. Like, it does not shock me at all that the society with which we have now would notice that something different was happening and then murder all those people. Does not shock me. There's no that's not
Checks
a
out.
surprise. It's what they do all the time. Most of our recent history included is just them doing that. So if
Yeah.
there was like this new evolution of humans that started eating plastic, instead of being like, nice, we have a super big plastic problem,
Yeah.
this will solve it. Instead, they'd be like, oh, but plastic humans aren't actually humans. So we should like make them
Yeah.
either have to hide or we'll murder them, or they would definitely like enslave them. Like, it's
Yeah.
100%. Our society is made of garbage, and that's
Yeah.
what would happen. So in that way, it's not that far fetched
Yeah. But
as
also
a
it's like
concept.
big food, like if you just think of like coal versus like clean energy, like
Yeah.
anyone who's like how hard they're trying to keep coal around, like that's what they would do. They'd be like,
Yeah.
well, yes, that would fix the environment, but then we can't sell fast food.
Yeah. And I mean, plastic is also like, because it's made out of natural gas and fossil fuels,
Yeah. Yeah.
which apparently we're short on. So I don't know why it's our main thing we make. But I also learned in my journey that the plastic industry is also pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. There's a lot of just like weird stuff happening there. And I watched a video on Climate Town's YouTube channel, as well as like a documentary and another documentary that he links in those videos. But it's all about how like plastic recycling is a scam, quote unquote, because we live in a capitalistic society. And I followed up on a lot of the research that they linked in the video, and it was pretty interesting. And ultimately, it really just explained in an entertaining way that because capitalism exists and recycling plastic is not profitable, that it doesn't really happen unless it's like one of the 10 or two out of the 10 kinds of plastic that exist.
Yep.
And as I said, the main reason being that we live in a capitalistic society. So what is convenient and cheap will always win within that system. And additionally, most plastic products, especially single-use plastic products, are more expensive to recycle than they are to dispose of and replace. Meaning that the many of the plastics that are created will never be recycled, and that's just because it's not profitable to do so. And the end result is that plastics are dumped in landfills, oceans, across our planet, and literally from the top of all the tallest mountains to the deepest parts of the ocean, instead of being recycled. And there's not enough information really about what that's going to do, because it's happened in the last like 50 to 80 years, to know like what the damage is going to be. But we're seeing the planet and our bodies and everything else react in real time.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of anxiety around this. And every so often in the Climate Town video, he kind of went into like how every few years we have like a panic
Yeah.
about plastics. And then like everyone thinks it's like kind of calmed down. And then 5 years later, there's another panic about plastics. And ultimately, like nothing is actually happening that's helping the plastic situation. But it's just like they have good marketing.
Yeah.
Plastics make a lot of money. So they have really good marketing and can do some pretty wild stuff. So that's my little tangent about that. But if you were interested in learning about that, the video was very interesting. They had follow-up documentaries that also explained it in ways that were like entertaining, informative, and like, I guess thought-provoking is a good word.
Yeah, you can also check out our ecological apocalypse episode to learn about how the planet is being damaged as well, to get even more depressed. Woo-hoo!
So exciting.
There's a goals for that.
There's a goals for that. And yeah, so the ultimate result is that there's so much happening to these ecosystems, to our world, that we just don't have the information around. And it's spreading at a rate that by the time we do know, it's going to be too late,
Uh-huh.
unless we really make some drastic action. And luckily, our ecosystems are adapting to this new environment, which is interesting. But the big question is, what will that adapting change our planet into? And will we be able to adapt to live in that new version of our planet?
So real.
Um, so, the production of plastics has an impact on our overall health. The problem mainly being that chemicals that are added to plastics and the way in which microplastics spread. So, there has been a lot of research done on the additives to plastic, which are already known for causing illness, infertility, and other issues. Their attachment to plastics is concerning because of how plastics disperse. And the way they spread cause them to disperse until they become airborne, which is fun. Um, so they literally have the means to infiltrate even our cell structures, and our bodies, our
Oh,
blood,
geez.
everything in there. And in an article on National Geographic titled Microplastics Are in Our Bodies, How Much Do They Harm Us? They go into detail on what is impacted by these tiny particles. And they say a few years ago, as microplastics began turning up in the guts of fish and shellfish, the concern was focused on a safety of seafood. Shellfish were a particular worry because, in their case, unlike fish, we eat the entire animal, stomach, microplastics, and all. In 2017, Belgian scientists announced that seafood lovers could consume up to 11,000 plastic particles a year just by eating mussels, a favorite dish in that country. This spring, scientists from the Netherlands and the UK announced that they had found tiny plastic particles living in humans in two places where they hadn't been seen before, deep inside the lungs of surgical patients and in the blood of anonymous donors. Neither of the two studies answered the questions of possible harm, but together they signaled a shift in the focus and concern about plastics towards the cloud of airborne dust particles we live in. Some of them, so small, they can penetrate deep inside the body and even inside cells in ways that larger microplastics can't. So ultimately, they're spreading at a rate that's kind of alarming, to the point where it's like literally not environmentally sound to bury bodies in the ground anymore.
Mm.
It's also not environmentally sound to drink rainwater anymore because of how many chemicals and microplastics and PFAs and other things that are in it.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, there's things you can do to get around it, but essentially, consuming microplastics is basically unavoidable at this point. They're literally everywhere in everything we breathe all the time, everything we drink, but especially if you consume shellfish. So if you're allergic to shellfish, blessings to you. That's your body's way of being like, no.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, evolution, I guess. I don't know. And the main reason that this is concerning, I feel like there's a lot of obvious ones, but it's because there's not enough information surrounding the long term impact of plastic on our bodies. We do have evidence that the additives of plastic can cause breathing problems, hormonal disruptions, as I said, infertility, and other concerns. But in not knowing that answer of like how damaging it is and with the rate with which microplastics spread, we may find out too late just how much damage microplastics have done and continue to do.
I will say it's probably a really good guess, that it's gonna be bad, so we probably should just not.
Yeah.
I think we can
Yeah.
err on the side of caution, you know?
But that's not profitable games. So, but they're
That's so
not.
real, that's
They're
so
not
real.
going to.
Ugh.
Everything that I learned
Ugh.
about plastic recycling was okay, but like they could do it. They have the technology, but it's expensive. So they're
Yeah.
not going to.
Watching any Climate Town video makes you, like, wanna just hide in a hole because 'cause you're like, "Wow, the world is hopeless."
Yeah.
It's so evil. It's
Like
so
pieces. Yeah.
insidiously evil.
And I mean, the Climate Town video does go into, like, pretty good detail about, like, what can be done in terms of, like, legislation is our way out of this. Removing single-use plastic in all of our spaces is essential to making this less horrible. And that is only going to be done legislatively because you can change your own personal habits all you want. You can switch to non-plastic containers all you want.
Yeah.
It's not going to matter if the
Doesn't matter.
government is not supporting those policies because they do most damage. Rich people
Yeah.
in the government do the most damage. So it really just has to come from the ground or the top down.
Uh-huh.
Uh, or the bottom up in terms of voting all the people who are doing the crappy stuff out because they're being paid off and they're not doing their jobs.
Yeah.
And
Big
then,
plastic.
yeah, among other things, there's a long list of things that our government gets paid to just be like, I think it's fine. Let them all go. And then bad things happen,
Yep.
shockingly enough. In a Guardian article titled Microplastics Cause Damage to Human Cells, studies show the research analyzed 17 previous studies which looked at the toxicological impacts of microplastics on human cell lines. The scientists compared the levels of microplastics at which damage was caused to the cells with the levels consumed by people through contaminated drinking water, seafood, and table salt, apparently. They found specific types of harm, cell death, allergic response, and damage to cell walls were caused by the levels of microplastics that people ingest. Harmful effects on cells are in many cases the initiating events of health effects, said Evangelos Donopoulos of Hull York Medical School, UK, and who led the research published in the Journal of Hazardous Materials. He said, "We should be concerned right now. Right now there really isn't a way to protect ourselves. And future research could make it possible to identify the most contaminated foods and have us avoid them," he said. But the ultimate solution was to stop the loss of plastic waste. Once the plastic is in the environment, we can't really get rid of it or get it out of the environment. And ultimately, the more that I think about it, if
Yeah.
shellfish is filled with the most microplastics, it would really make sense why so many people are allergic to shellfish. Maybe it has nothing to do with the fish and everything to do with the microplastics. I don't know. As I'll say in a second, I'm really not a scientist. I don't know how any of this works, but the people in these articles do sound like they know what they're talking about.
They're
So
scientists.
yeah, they actually are real scientists. So, and I'm quoting them directly. So maybe not fantastically, but I'm doing my best. And I read a few other articles specifically about plastic eating microbes and bugs that are evolving to eat plastic, which is super
That's
interesting.
rad.
Just like, or Gabe found some of them and I found other ones. So it's a little bit of both. And what's interesting about this is kind of like the adaptability of our environments. And we'll kind of just have to see if that transfers to us. In another article on The Guardian, which I found a lot of articles on The Guardian, there's a titled "Bugs Across Globe Are Evolving to Eat Plastic, Study Finds." They go through how various bugs, microbes, and other creatures are evolving to eat plastic, specifically saying microbes in oceans and soils across the globe are evolving to eat plastic. According to a study, the research scanned more than 200 million genes found in the DNA samples taken from the environment and found 30,000 different enzymes that could degrade 10 different types of plastic. If you're me, you may have initially thought, wow, that sounds really complicated. What the heck does that mean? Well, I'm not a scientist, but the scientist in the article said the results provide evidence of a measurable effect of plastic pollution on the global microbial ecology. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
it does that.
And they continue to say that millions of tons of plastic are dumped into the environment every year, and the pollution now pervades the planet from the summit of Mount Everest to the deepest oceans. Reducing the amounts of plastics used is vital as the proper collection and treatment of waste. And the main issue seems to be that we have not yet found a way to degrade and recycle plastics that is cheaper than creating new plastics. It seems like the solution because obviously in this profit hungry society, that is the only way it's going to get done. But the adapting of the environment is super interesting. Apparently they could if they do get this to where it needs to be, that they could use enzymes to rapidly break down plastics to their building blocks, which is like natural gas and fossil fuels. And this would enable new products to be made from the old ones, cutting the need for virgin plastic production. The new research provides many new enzymes to be investigated and adapted for industrial use. And what's interesting about that is just like that there's creatures and animals that are evolving to meet the need to break down plastic. This is happening in the oceans just because the oceans specifically are getting the bulk of our plastic dumping.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it makes sense that we would see this specifically there, because to survive, if the animals within the ocean are going to survive, something is going to need to get rid of that plastic. Um, they continue on to say that we found multiple lines of evidence supporting the fact that the global microbiome's plastic degrading potential correlates strongly with the measurements of environmental plastic pollution, a significant demonstration of how the environment is responding to the pressures we are placing on it, which was said by Professor Aletskej at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. A different scientist from the same university named Zan Zermik says that we did not expect to find such a large number of enzymes across so many different microbes and environmental habitats. That is a surprising discovery that really illustrates the scale of an issue. Specifically, that evolution is taking place at such a rate within
Yeah.
these ecosystems because of just how much plastic is in there. And I mean, the real solution is to remove the plastics from those environments. But within our world, it seems uncertain that that's going to happen anytime soon, unless there's like people who know about it and like really care. Or alternatively, we harvest and train these microbes to eat these plastics.
Uh-huh.
And the explosion of plastics happened in the last 70 years.
Mhm.
We went from 2 M tons to 380, which I assume means million, 380 million tons a year, which is a lot. 2 to 380, that is many. So there's just like a lot out there for these microbial enzymes to have to deal with. And I think as abstract and crazy as this Cronenbergian future sounds, it also doesn't sound too crazy in that, like, if we're going to survive in this new world, our bodies might have to do the same thing, or we might have to like learn to adapt and find symbiotic relationships with these like enzymes, creatures, what have you.
Uh-huh.
Um, or honestly, tattoo and rearrange our organs. I don't know. It really seems pretty bizarre. But I highly recommend like looking into the Climate Towns video and like all the adjacent resources that he listed, because it did seem like a lot needs to happen with the plastic industry itself. There's lots of things that have been done marketing wise to intentionally make it so people think something's happening that's positive when there's not. And a specific example of this is on a lot of plastic containers. I have one next to me. They list a little symbol on it that would suggest that it is
Recyclable.
recyclable. But the kicker there is that it's not actually the recycling symbol. It is a symbol that specifically is just to say it's like resin identification number, which has nothing to do with recycling. But they kind of, since the recycling symbol itself, like as a marketing item, was public domain,
Uh-huh.
the plastic companies purchased it and made it their resin identification number so that people, when have all their Earth Day pictures, everyone associates that symbol with the 3 arrows
Uh-huh.
as a recycling symbol. So they put that on all the plastic products, or at least the majority of them, because I can't find it right now, but I've seen it where they have like little numbers inside, which is you think it's a kind of recycling thing, and it's not. It's just this
Probably on the
resin
bottom.
identification number.
You check the bottom.
I don't want to spill the remnants of the Gatorade.
Yeah, that I have power here. I think it's like 1 and 2 because there's numbers. The numbers
Mm-hmm.
mean I think 1 and
1
2
and
are the
2.
only ones that are actually recyclable, and the rest are we send to different countries who then
I found it. It's a 4, so it's not
so it's not
recyclable.
recyclable. Um,
Damn.
exactly. Yeah, and so they send it to another country, and then that country throws it out, and it's not our fault anymore. So
Mhm.
we can say, like, our companies can say, we aren't polluting the environment. We're not
Is
putting
it a
the
4?
the toxicities in there. Um, those other people are doing that, and it has nothing to do with us. But we're just sending it over there. So, yeah, highly, highly recommend Climate Town. Also, I remember watching this documentary. I think they did it for our ecological episode, but it was like, there's the trash islands, and
Mhm.
uh, essentially they were like, when these birds would die, they would like cut them open, and their stomachs are just full of
Of
plastic.
plastic, yeah.
Or my partner follows this Reddit thread or Reddit subreddit, I don't know what they're called, of like under the water scary things in the ocean. And
Mhm.
the deepest depths of the ocean, it was like at the very bottom, it was like nothing lives down here, no one can get down here. And they got this picture of it and there was like a Coke can. It was like, oh, okay, yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It does make sense to me. Um, but yeah, ultimately, a lot of work has been done to make you think that these things are recyclable when they're not. So you don't realize how bad the problem is until it's too late.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're gonna
Plastics are
evolve
in
to be
our
able to
blood
eat
already.
plastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably not going to be in our generation. I imagine that would be in a much more distant future.
Yeah, I hope so in some way. But if we do find like if we genetically modify or make something that can eat plastic, I hope we then, are think a few steps ahead and also think of ways to not let those things get out of hand. I'm thinking Horizon Zero Dawn. little, little of that going on in my brain. Of
Yeah.
let's not make it so that these robots consume biology. That doesn't sound good.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
in a
no, no,
perfect
no,
manner.
100%. Like little microbots in our bodies consuming all the little plastic things, and then they're like, "Now we really let now most of our body is plastic because of what's
Yeah,
happening." They just eat people now. There's a lot of implications that could take place. Also, like every single movie that's about like infertility as
yeah,
the future of our planet,
yeah,
that is a result of plastic chemicals. It's like
yep,
chemicals that are additives to plastic. So if you're also worried about that, that's another motivator.
yeah. And Kat, what was your hypothesis or idea for what people could do to be able to consume plastic?
I told you them. I wrote them down and I sent them to you. There's a lot of possible things that we could do. But I really think one of them is forming a symbiotic relationship with parasites of some kind, like whales.
Uh huh.
We could be like the whales in the ocean where they like form a symbiotic relationship with the little fish that eat all the parasites on their body.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could be like rhinos that form a symbiotic relationship with like the little things that eat the flies,
Yeah.
in their faces.
Uh huh.
There's so many options available. And one thing that I said that I thought would be really funny is if we got back into leeches, like if leeches became back in fashion, specifically with like we somehow train them to specifically just remove plastics. We train leeches to remove plastics from our body. Sounds crazy. I don't know if that could actually happen. I don't even know if it's possible, but it would be
Yeah.
really interesting. Or if we just have like little bug friends and then we could turn
Yeah.
them like into fashion statements.
Yeah.
This is
I
all
like.
stuff rich people could do right
Yeah.
now. Kim Kardashian.
I like your little passenger's idea. Like you just got the little guy inside, he's eating all the plastic and makes you
Yeah.
healthy.
Start
I'm here
a
for it.
fashion line of like parasite or microplastic eating bugs that you
Yeah.
wear as like fashion on your face, you
I
know?
will say the person who's most likely to do that would not be a Kardashian, but would be Paris Hilton. Like
Oh,
straight out. One, she's got like
fashion icon,
degrees.
genius.
Yeah, genius, IQ.
Yeah,
Like she cares
science.
about she has a lot of charities and she cares about the environment. If anyone's gonna do
All
it,
right,
it's gonna
Paris
be so
Hilton.
Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton. Plastics are hurting the environment.
Yeah,
You're on it.
yeah.
You're on it.
Partner
I
with
trust
a
you.
scientist.
I trust you. If you'll figure whatever you figure out, I'm here for you as long as it's affordable, and
If
that's the
it's
biggest
a
trick.
cute leech,
Yeah.
you wear
Do
them
they
as
get little
earrings,
hats?
You wear them as earrings. They
Yeah.
stick to your ears and they suck all the microplastics out. It
I'm
sounds
down with
great.
whatever it is as long as it doesn't make everyone horny. Okay?
Yeah.
Just like that was a lot. A lot of very close talking, and everyone was on the cusp of an orgasm at all times
Yes. It
in
was a
this
lot.
film.
It was very much a lot.
It was
So
like,
much. And I was like,
"Are you
never.
ready for breakfast?" I was like,
I
"No, I
don't
don't
know
wanna
if
get
I've
in the
ever
jiggly chair."
talked that way in my entire life. And it was just really wild how
Yeah,
breathy
yeah,
everyone just got into speaking. It was like
yeah.
the whole time.
Kristen Stewart raised my anxiety levels to 100.
She was
Like,
made for
she
that
was
role
so
though.
intense,
I know, but
it
she was
stressed me out.
made for that role.
Absolutely, but I was like, "I can't breathe when you're around," and not in
Yes.
a good way, like, you're
She was
stressing me out.
very unhinged in this movie, but in a fun way,
Yeah, I love
that
it,
was
love that
very
for her.
stressful. Um,
If you watched, this David Cronenberg film, tell us what you think about it. If you watch other Cronenberg films, tell us what you think about those. You could maybe
yeah,
listen to that episode. It's a long time ago. The quality is not great. I don't remember what we said in it, but
I
you're
don't
welcome
remember
to
either.
listen. You could go search into the archives of Ghouls to find it. Um, like I said, we had a really great
Also,
guest for it.
yeah, and if you watch this movie and, like, totally understood everything about it,
Yeah,
and you wanna make, like, a documentary length explanation
yeah,
of what it was, I will watch that because I
yeah,
am genuinely interested. I feel like this movie was saying stuff, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and it just went over my head.
yeah.
Because
I feel
as
like
I
I
said,
got it.
I'm not a scientist. I am kinda smart, but
You
we
are
both
smart.
kinda have COVID brain.
Yeah, yeah, we both have go brain. Give kind of some slack. Also,
Yeah,
this is a trivia movie to deal with.
yeah.
I think
I
I
think
think
it's,
that's
like,
good.
ironic as heck that we didn't get it from each other,
Yeah, but we did pass it on
but
to
we
each
got it
other,
at
which
the
was
same
fun.
time.
Hilarious. That's what
Woo!
2023 is. New year, new us. We're sick. There's plastics in the air. There's plastics in
In our
yourself.
blood, in our lungs. No
Plastics
wonder I got
in your
asthmas.
bod. Plastics in the
That's how the
fish.
zombie apocalypse spreads.
Plastics.
Spores, microplastics
Yeah.
combine, spread everywhere. Now everyone's a zombie because it's airborne. No? Okay, just me? Just me?
I was on board about your little passenger parasite friends.
Okay, I don't think it should happen that way. I'm just saying if it were to happen anyway,
Yeah,
it would make sense because 'cause
yeah,
they're in everything.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, watch a movie or don't, whatever you want. Cronenberg's
Couldn't
not for
tell you.
everyone, like Kat said,
Oh, that's
but
fine.
they are for somebody, right? Like David Cronenberg is definitely someone's cup of tea, someone's cup of shaky tea on their shaky chair. And I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad we gave it a shot.
Oh, yeah, it
Look,
is ridiculous and fun. It's given me something to, like, think about, I guess,
yeah,
even though it was pretty chaotic.
yeah,
I have no regrets in watching it, nor
no
do I think
regret.
it was horrible. It was just like, wow, that was a lot.
Yeah. I just remember being really angry that they were upset about the plastic people because I was like,
Oh, yeah.
this answers so many. Like, I get it. I get why they're angry because they're like people are the worst. But like, oh,
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't want to be a plastic eater, but I don't know. Maybe I'd take one for the team. I'm not like a big foodie, I'm not
Mhm.
crazy about it.
Yeah, honestly, it
I'm
would
not
solve
good
a
at
lot of
eating as it is.
problems. It's really wild that, like, it's not surprising, like, the people in charge are not the smartest on our planet, so they
What?
definitely would not be doing the right thing in this situation, but it
Yeah.
is enraging, because they would solve a major problem if you could serve plastic as food and
Yeah.
it not harm our
Yeah.
bodies.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's
Why is
like
it a
clean
big let them
energy.
eat plastic. Let them.
Like, be
Why
angry
does it
about
matter?
clean energy when you're
Because if
like,
it
"Oh,
doesn't
okay.
harm them, like, they actually need it for sustenance, solves so many problems.
Yeah, it actually helps them." Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like Don't Look Up. You just translate, like, meteor to climate change, and it makes sense, and that's, like, what this is. It's like, "Oh, we could do renewable resources," you know, or big coal, you know? We could do
Yeah.
clean coal, which is fiction. That's fictional. Um, so yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Cronenberg gets it. I don't get Cronenberg, but I get it. And yeah, it was a fun episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Closes out our new year, new me. so now we're old again,
Mhm.
and next week starts our new series, which is uh, Tainted Love.
Mhm.
'Cause it's February, get it?
Yeah.
uh,
Romance.
yeah. So don't get married.
Delete your kids,
Yeah,
or your kids will eat plastic.
and then your partner will try to unalive
No.
them, or they're the new
Or
plastic
or you
eaters.
raise that beautiful plastic eating baby, and
He
you
was
let
so
them live
cute.
their lives.
His hair was beautiful. I loved
Mhm.
him. Little pica baby. All
Let
right,
them let 'em do. It's
let
okay.
him live. Okay, bye.
Bye. What if I just started eating this?
Deep
Okay, but,
cut,
like,
deep cut, deep cut.
what if?
But what if you
It
just
would be
started eating
really
plastic? That would be pretty impressive.
it would be the most method thing I've
Yeah.
ever done on this show. I
I'd be
just
really
wanna
impressed. So